All right, today I want to share with you something that's probably going to surprise you. When I first started in nutrition, I thought I had designed the perfect diet for me. I had lists of food to avoid, the foods that I should include, a bunch of rules around what to do. It was comprehensive, it included everything. It also had the most optimized supplement and vitamin protocol, and it included everything I had learned from bodybuilding forums and nutrition textbooks. And you know what happened with this plan? I failed miserably. But what I learned from that early failure completely changed how I approach nutrition, not just for myself, but for the clients that I work with today. My name is Dr. Mark Morris. I am a nutrition coach and the founder of the Nutrition Coaching Academy. Now, before you think this is just some clickbait story, I want you to hang around to the end of this video, because here's my promise to you. By the end of this video, you'll understand why most perfect diets fail, and more importantly, what's actually going to work for you instead. The truth is, most people struggle because they're making three critical mistakes. The same mistakes that I now see 90% of people make when they're trying to optimize their nutrition. Fix those and you're off to the races. Let's start with mistake number one, the perfectionism trap. When I first started focusing on my health and nutrition, I was spending the majority of my time hanging out in the gym and the weight room. And the rest of it, I was scouring through nutrition and bodybuilding forums to make sure I knew everything I had to about what I was eating to improve my results. This was my main focus. It's literally the only thing I care about. And I came across this one thorough and comprehensive protocol that I read online, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna create a plan for myself around it. So I did what any nutrition nerd would do. I came up with a plan. It was perfectly scientifically designed, and it described all the steps and all the features and all the rules to a T. Each meal laid out the protein source, why the carb source came from a fruit in this meal, totally lined up with when my glycogen levels would be low and optimized around my training. Everything was laid out, every meal for the days and the weeks. I even had backup meals for when I was traveling, a plan B, a plan C. It was all perfectly planned. It looked perfect on paper. And for about 2 weeks, it was also perfect in execution. But here's the thing about the perfect plan. I didn't know it at the time, but this is now what I teach my clients about perfectionism. The moment my life got in the way, and life always gets in the way, that perfect plan and the protocol, it completely crumbled. I remember the exact moment when it fell apart. I was at a study group that ran late, so I missed my 3 p.m. planned snack. This moved around my workout nutrition, so I didn't feel great during my workout, which made me irritable. You can see the cascade starting to happen, which led me to stress eat a bag of movie popcorn that one of my roommates brought home later that evening. One missed meal turned into a psychological spiral because I made a mistake and I couldn't fix it, and things just continued to get worse. And this is because my perfect plan, it had no flexibility. I had set something up that needed to be perfect in order to work. I had no structure or control over the things that really influence my results. Have you ever done this? Created a checklist plan that needed to be executed perfectly in order to work? When you're doing well, it's amazing, but the moment life gets in the way, that's when things start to crumble. You gotta get away from this. The second mistake I made early on was that I was treating myself like a textbook case study instead of a human being with ingrained habits and psychological patterns. When I work with clients now, one of the first things that I try to do is get a better sense of the relationship with food. Because back then, I completely ignored my own psychology, which meant if I deemed a food off limits, I was going to avoid it at all costs. You know what would happen when I would get stressed out as a university student, which I normally would? I would overeat those foods that were off limits. I would go crazy, I would binge, and I would hate myself for doing it. Doesn't sound very healthy, does it? But in my mind, I needed to do that to be perfect. So instead of building some of that stuff into my plan, I just thought I could rely on willpower to avoid it forever and work around it entirely. For many people, when you tell yourself that you can't have something, you're gonna want it 10 times more. Classic restriction, binge cycle type stuff. But did I account for that? No, I just eliminated all the foods I thought was suboptimal, and I avoided them. I had a list of foods that I couldn't eat, and I cut them out of my diet and I avoided them altogether, not really based on science, but more based on the things that I'd read online. And I cut those out, and I expected my brain just to be cool with it. And I could get away with this for a period of time. 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. But then there was a breaking point. I had eliminated all desserts from my diet because they didn't really fit into the plan. They weren't doing much for me. But then I'd go home for the weekend and my mom would make chocolate chip cookies and things would start to crumble. Dr. Mark on a plan would never eat that. But Mark at 11 p.m. when no one's watching, he's gonna down 6 of those cookies, then feel terrible about it, then dive into some shame spiral and never let it happen again. And vow your willpower will be better. But here's what I learned in those instances. It wasn't about willpower. It was about basic human psychology. The more something is off limits, the more you're going to want it, and you're gonna be in a much better situation to plan it realistically, work it in, feel better about it because you have control over it, and then move on. Mistake number 3, forgetting the long game. The name of the game in fitness and in health is playing the long game. It isn't what you can do right now. It's what you can do consistently over longer periods of time. If you can outlive everybody else, that's what will give you crazy results. The biggest mistake I was making at the beginning was that I was optimizing for perfection instead of consistency. One of the best examples of this was trying to optimize for supplements or quick fixes, things that really didn't influence the long game. I remember in university having a supplement wall. It was this huge wall of supplements that were empty because I consumed all of them and I was proud of it. It was like a trophy wall. But while I was focused on doing things perfect in that regard, I was also avoiding the long-term bigger picture. I was missing the forest for those trees. Think about it this way. Imagine you're trying to get from point A to point B, and you have 2 travel routes. Route number 1 is going to get you there 8 minutes faster, but it also has complicated directions, there's tolls, there's construction, and sometimes it just shuts down randomly. Route number 2 takes you longer to get there, but it's straightforward, it's reliable, and you can take that route every day, get from point A to point B without really thinking about it. Most people, and I definitely did this early on, they focus on taking route number 1. They optimize for the 8-minute improvement while sacrificing consistency that's gonna work over the long term. They got to work one day 8 minutes earlier instead of thinking about, did I get to work 100 days in a row? I was so focused on executing a plan that had the perfect supplement protocol and the exact foods to eat and when, that I created a system that was pass or fail. Years later, when I started focusing on tracking the big picture variables of my nutrition, not the pass-fail system, but did I eat enough total protein over the course of the day? Did I train with weights 4 times this week? Have I been getting at least 10,000 steps in each and every day? Are most of my meals coming from whole foods? When I started tracking these big picture variables, instead of obsessing over the minute details, that's when I started getting consistent results month after month. The 6-pack I had been chasing the entire time and I was never able to achieve, I got there. The wake-up call happened when I looked back, not just at the results, but at the data and how compliant I was with the different approaches. 50% adherent on the perfect plan was losing out to 80% with much more flexibility. And it's hard to see the difference when you're stuck in the weeds trying to execute on it. Let me recap what I learned from these early mistakes. First off, I got stuck in that perfectionism trap, creating a rigid system with no flexibility for real life. Secondly, I ignored my own psychology and I tried to use willpower, trying to just put my head down and break through patterns that had been ingrained in me for years. And lastly, I optimized for perfection instead of consistency. When you put these all together, you can see exactly why these mistakes were holding me back from reaching my goals. That protocol and that approach that I had piecemealed together online, it looked perfect on paper, but it was the worst thing for me long term. Fast forward 15, maybe 18 years later, and here's what I do differently with myself, but also the step-by-step process I take my nutrition clients through. Instead of the perfect diet, I focus on what now I call the good enough approach, led by data and not just feelings. We create structure around our nutrition based on the things that matter most for results and for goals, especially when it comes to performance and body composition. Think daily totals for calories and macronutrients. And this isn't about being lazy and avoiding executing the perfect plan. And that's because good enough beats perfect, because you can do it for long enough to actually see results. And this is something that's been proven time and time again with the thousands of nutrition clients I've worked with. Good enough means hitting your protein target for the entire day 80% of the time, instead of being 100% compliant on the perfect meal plan. Because you can do this for years instead of this just for days. Good enough means making food choices that you enjoy and will stick to, instead of being perfect and then restricting and binging down the road. If you're thinking about changing your own approach to nutrition, here are 3 things you can put into action today and implement. First, take a step back and audit your current plan and habits for perfectionism. Is there anything that you're currently doing right now that you think you need to do in order to be successful? And if you can't do it, does it derail everything else? Secondly, get objective with your own psychology. Are there foods that you've deemed completely off limits that you overeat? Is there a certain part of the day that you struggle with? Design your approach and build your habits around these patterns instead of just pretending they don't exist. And come up with a plan that puts consistency at the forefront and makes that the most important thing instead of perfection. Good and done is always better than perfect. Now, if this resonates with you today and you want to learn more about how to create a sustainable nutrition plan based on the good enough process, I've got a completely free resource that I've linked down below. It's at the first link down there in the description. It's going to show you everything you need to know and put into action to create your own good enough nutrition system. And if you found this video helpful, hit that subscribe button and check out this video I've linked up right here. Because next, I'm going to show you step by step how to set up a fat loss diet by tracking the things that matter. You can check out that process in this video right here. Check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.